All right, this is Chucky, and you're listening to Chucky Radio. This podcast is my opportunity to tell stories, and since I love to travel, a lot of the stories revolve around travel. I always like to have friends join me to help tell the stories or someone just to tell the story too. This episode, I'm going to talk about my trip to Australia that I took in 2012. And joining me is my friend, Jahna. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to Chucky Radio. Okay, so that opening music is by Joseph McDade. So I have with me Jahna today.
Hello.
Hey, Jahna, how are you?
I'm great.
So, Jahna, today I'm going to tell my story about this crazy trip I took down to Australia, and I know that you've had some interest in Australia.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it.
My interests? Oh, well, I've been wanting to go to Australia for quite a long time, probably since high school, maybe early college. Before I had ever traveled even out of the country. A lot of it is because I had watched movies about it as a young age. My mom had kind of glorified it, but also I'd read about it. My dad had some old books and encyclopedias that I used to read in my spare time, because this is, of course, before the internet. So
Wow.
He would be gone and I wouldn't have anything else to do. So I would read these encyclopedias, and they had lots of pictures. And they had stories about the Aborigines, and I just always have had an interest in the ocean. So the Great Barrier Reef has always had a big interest to me.
And now you're certified to scuba dive.
Yes.
You did that not too long ago.
In 2015. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So that will allow you to hopefully go dive the Great Barrier Reef.
I hope so. I really want to go. I mean, I know it's in some peril right now, so I'd like to go soon.
So I hope my story doesn't disappoint, because there's some things that I learned when I was on that trip that I thought was kind of interesting. And just to kind of give a little bit of background, I had been working for this German manufacturer for like 3 years. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because I'd just gotten into the industry, and they asked me to help them manage their sales for the U.S. because they were kind of making some major changes. And after 3 years, I'd actually saved up quite a bit of money, and they decided to finally pull out of the U.S. And so I'm like, man, I've got some money saved up and I want to travel. Mm-hmm. And so...
So you went by yourself?
Yeah. I took a month.
You went for a month by yourself?
So
That's amazing.
They pulled out in like July of 2011, and then I started planning the trip. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go down there in February because that's the middle of our winter, but that's their summer.
Right.
And here I am. I'm like thinking, yeah, I'm gonna be smart and go during the summer, and it's going to be beautiful down there. So first big mistake. It turns out it's awesome in Sydney. So I flew, from Austin to LA, and then American has a code share with Qantas, and I ended up on their massive new Airbus. Of
course you did.
The 380 Airbus. And so we went like a 13-hour flight from LA to Sydney. And Sydney was beautiful. I mean, one of the most gorgeous cities in the world that I've ever been to.
Okay, I want to go again.
Yeah. No, you've got the Opera House, that's gorgeous. You've got the bridge there. The city itself, it has an amazing park right there in the city. And, I spent like 2 days just checking out Sydney, and ended up going to a couple of the famous beaches. And the one that's the big famous beach is Manly Beach. And there was a surfing competition going on.
Nice.
And volleyball tournaments. And I mean, it was cool. It kind of reminded me a lot of California, the way their beach was. But the city itself was like a really clean European city. It was really interesting.
Was the water warm there?
It was all right. It was
kind of like California cold?
Yeah, it was kind of like a California. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Just curious.
And so my lesson was, if you're just going down to that southernmost point, then summertime's great. But as I started going north, which would be towards the equator,
warmer,
it started getting really warm and humid. It reminded me the same, like we go to Mexico here, the best time of year is during the winter time because it's not so hot and humid. And you end up, in the summer is when the rainy season is and it's humid. So anyway, definitely recommend Sydney. Is just beautiful city to check out. And
dun dun dun, and then what happened?
And I jump on a train to Brisbane. And so Brisbane was kind of my jumping off point. I said, because from Brisbane all the way up to where you go to dive at the Great Barrier Reef, which is north.
Okay.
That was going to be my northernmost point to end, is called Port Douglas and Cairns. And so I'm like, okay, I'll just take the train to Brisbane and then I'll rent a car and literally just drive for like over 2 weeks. And so I get to Brisbane, and Brisbane's like Miami.
Oh, okay.
It is trip.
Well, that gives me an image.
It is a trip because, and here's the thing I'll say about Australia, the thing for me that was a little disappointing is I'm used to traveling to somewhere, different, exotic. People are totally interesting and different. You go to the French Riviera, or you go to England, or you go,
Right.
I mean, I've traveled down to South America, and you get all that Latin flair, and it's just totally different cultures. I get to the coast of Australia. I don't think I left Texas, except for the accent. Oh my God, they're like,
really?
Yes, they are kind of redneckish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's not what I would have thought.
Exactly. Everyone thinks like, oh, the Australian accent, but no.
Either surfer type or Crocodile Dundee type or model and actor type. I don't know, because I haven't been there, and obviously
we have all that here.
I need to learn.
Like you do get a little bit of that California vibe in some parts, beachy parts. But in general, the people, outside the accent, it just felt like I was in the U.S. I kind of felt like, it was kind of a little bit along the coastal towns. It was a little bit redneckish.
Yeah.
It was interesting. So, I mean, it was, it surprised me.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
I haven't heard that really before. Yeah. So it does surprise me.
And the one thing that was kind of fun was, I did happen to be there. This is February of 2012. I don't remember. It was like the Patriots and somebody else was playing in the Super Bowl. And so because they're 14 hours ahead, when the Super Bowl is playing at 6 p.m. here, Central Time in the U.S., it was like 10 in the morning, Monday morning in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I got to see the Super Bowl, I'm not a huge football fan, but it's always kind of fun. And so I go to a bar in downtown Brisbane, and sure enough, there's a whole group of people at 10 in the morning drinking beers.
Of course.
And
you found it.
And they had jerseys on and everything.
That sounds really fun, though.
Like Patriot jerseys and stuff. It was really funny. And so, what ended up happening is I ended up kind of getting to be friends with this one guy who was Australian and this other guy that was from New Zealand. And we're just hanging out, and they're like big, I guess, it was Tom Brady's the big, quarterback. They were Patriot fans for the most part. And gosh, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the other team. I think it was the Green Bay Packers or somebody like that. Anyway. And no, it was fun. It was a trip to watch an American iconic sport event in an Australian bar.
Were most of the people there foreigners?
No, they were all
people from
Australians.
There?
I don't even think I even met any foreigners in that bar.
Wow.
They were into it.
Were you for one team or the other?
No. I think I was for whoever the underdog was, but of course the Patriots I won. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, I'm not going to get into football because that's like
not really part of it.
Not really part of it.
That's pretty neat though.
So, of course, when I get into Brisbane and I stay the night, and the next morning was the Super Bowl, and I did that, and then I went to go get my rent-a-car. I was going to leave kind of that afternoon and start going up to Coast. And I literally didn't know where I was going to stay. I had nothing reserved. And I brought a little tent. I bought this little pup tent.
Sounds like such a great trip so far.
So I'm like, I'm gonna, find some hotels along the way, but I'll also probably just camp out somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I end up getting my rent-a-car, and the first thing is the trip of driving on the left side of the road.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of freaks you out at first, because I'm in the city. And in Brisbane's, pretty good sized city, and there's like roundabouts, and I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go like to the left side, to the right. And I get, you get used to it pretty quick, and I got out of the city, and then once you're on the open road, it's no big deal. You just stay to the left. And I remember, getting, and this is, I'm gonna probably skip around a little bit, but really there was two places that stood out to me going up the coast and then finally going to where I went to scuba diving. So I decided I wanted to go to Bundaberg because of this rum that I had drank back in Brisbane. Is like their big famous rum. It's called Bundaberg rum. Mm-hmm. And so that was like one of the first places I stopped. Now, you'll love this. Okay. I get into Bundaberg, go grab my hotel, and decide to go eat. And as I'm having dinner, I'm down at some little restaurant right off the beach. And and they had this little flyer there that was talking about you can go to the sea turtle sanctuary. They had one of the big sea turtle sanctuaries is right there in Bundaberg. Uh-huh. I'm like, that's cool. And so as I'm kind of reading it and it has the address and everything, after dinner, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drive by there so I can see where it's at. And I'm going to go there first thing in the morning to go check it out. And I didn't know anything if it was sea turtle season or any of that, right? And this is just one of the things that happens, you know what I mean? When you're traveling, just the unexpected.
The best.
Yeah,
the best things.
The surprises, right?
Right.
So I pull in to this location where the sanctuary is, and literally the parking lot's full of cars. Ugh. It's like 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Mm-hmm. And
what did you happen upon, Chucky?
So I walk into the building and it's packed with people. And I go up to the counter. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, the sea turtles are hatching. And we're taking groups of people to go help guide the sea turtles into the ocean.
Oh,
I'm like,
no way. You had no idea before you got there.
No idea. So I'm like, that sounds really cool. And they're like, yeah, people have made reservations like 2-3 months in advance to be able to do this.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh man. And they're like, so are you with someone? I'm like, no, I'm just here by myself. And they're like, hold on. I think we can get you in with one of the groups.
Oh.
So, and I think there was like a max. They have a group of it was either 8 or 10 people. And she went and checked and stuff and talked to somebody and then came back. She's like, yeah, we're going to get you in. And they totally got me in.
Hey, next time we go travel somewhere, if there's an issue like that, we should just act like we're all each separate. Right. And then we can all three get in and meet up later. I'm just taking notes here.
That's funny. So I end up going down with the group. And here's, the other kind of crazy part is that in the group of 8 to 10 people, what they do is they'll take you down the beach. You know, this happens when the moon is real bright, and part of it is, you know, sea turtles when they hatch.
They're in a trance.
Well, what happens is, because there's so many modern day lights in the cities, they can get confused.
Oh, with the moon.
Because, yes, they follow the moon into the ocean. But if there's like a light in the horizon from a city or anything, they can get confused. So that's part of this process is helping. We actually bring flashlights and stuff down there to help. And what ends up happening is, out of the group, they end up selecting only 3 people that actually get to stand there and hold flashlights to help guide the sea turtles into the ocean, and literally have the sea turtles walk between your legs. And
That's
they picked me
beautiful.
to be one of the 3 people.
Of course they did.
So I'm like last minute addition, and I get selected to be. So what they do is, you're walking down the beach and they'll identify, there's like a nest. You can see them. They've marked them. It's kind of, and then they do something like, I don't know if they kind of tap on it real lightly or do something that all of a sudden you'll start seeing the sand start moving. And it's the sea turtles that have hatched out of the little eggs, and they're making their way up out of the sand. And next thing you know, there's like tens of little baby sea turtles pouring out of the sand. And they create like this little, it's almost like a funnel that the sea turtles will crawl into, and they'll hold them up in like a little pen. They put this pen down on the sand. And so they'll get them all to group together, because again, one of the issues is predators.
Right.
So the more there's a larger group together traveling into the ocean together, the less likely that birds or other predators will pick them off.
This is about to make me cry.
And so once they had them all in this pen, it was cool, because that was the only point. You're not allowed to touch them. But what they did is, the guys that were the handlers, they had gloves, and they would pick them up, and that's when they would let you like barely touch their backs and take pictures and all that. Because the other thing is, they didn't want, you know, anybody taking pictures, because it would confuse the sea turtles. But once they had them all penned and everything, that was a one moment they let us do that. And so I got a couple cool pictures, and then that's when they selected, and then I got to stand there with my flashlight, and I opened a pen, and all these little sea turtles, like with their little flappy things, are like running between my legs, and I'm like, this is so cool.
Like, and there's George and John and Brenda, and you're just naming them all as they go by.
That's something you would do. And you would probably keep in contact with them.
I probably would.
You would go find them in the ocean and say, hey, I recognize you. You're John.
Yes.
You ran between my legs.
I have to recognize all my babies. I just watched a movie about my octopus teacher on Netflix, and it was so great. And I don't want to give it away, but it tells you something about communication with animals and recognition, and it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that was one of the highlights of the trip. Of course, my plan to camp, well, let's just put it this way. I got to the campground. It's this beautiful little area, and there's the Carlo, they call it the Carlo Blow. It's like the Carlos, something like that. If you look it up, it's this amazing area where the wind has blown the sand into like the jungle, and it's created this massive pile of sand that you can go hike up on top of, and the sand is different layers of colors. So as you walk, it'll be like tan on top, but then red will come out from underneath. It's such a trip.
Wow.
It's really cool. And so right there near the sand blow, there's like a little state park that goes right along the shore. And so that was going to be, okay, this is where I'm going to camp. I'm going to hang out here for a few days. And I park my car, and I pull out my little pup tent. And it's like literally this tiny tent that I barely fit into, because I just wanted to bring the minimum.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Dude, I was dying. First of all...
Dying of what?
First of all, being attacked by mosquitoes. So that was awful.
You know what they say, Chucky? He who, how does it go? Wait. He who says small things cannot create change has never slept with a mosquito.
I like that. I had not heard that.
Well, there you go.
Well, I finally, because I went and drove to go grab something to eat and got back to my little tent, and I get in there, and then the other thing was, in order to keep the mosquitoes out, it had a little net, but you had to kind of zip it up.
Mm-hmm.
And your body heat makes it just so warm in the tent. So I'm in there sweating, dying, waiting.
Mosquito-free dying?
Trying to, the mosquitoes aren't getting in, but here's the thing. The only way I could cool it down is I had to open the little door to let fresh air in. And of course, the minute I did that, mosquitoes would pour
But
in.
why wouldn't you have a screen window?
Had a screen, but it was like only half of the door was a screen. And so the bottom half was just tent. And still there wasn't like any wind, so there was no movement of air. So the only way you were going to really get any kind of
I'm remembering all of this for our future trips.
Travel during our summer, their winter, and it would be like being in Mexico.
And have the right screen on the window. And
have a big enough tent that has ventilation. But
I'm just trying to help our future selves.
Exactly.
My research and development habits.
I did not sleep much that night. That was my one and only night to sleep in my tent that I brought.
And then what? Where did you sleep after that?
The great thing was, because it was the off season, I could get on to Expedia, is what I mostly used, and I could find amazing deals in hotels. So I was finding like 3-star plus hotels for like $50 a night. And I was just like, screw it. I wasn't planning on spending money much on hotels, but
why rough it for the same price?
Exactly. I wasn't, it was $10 to get the camping permit to go camp. So for an extra $40 to sleep in a hotel room, the comfort of AC and no mosquitoes, it was like, done.
Ching.
Cha-ching. So the other little trip I did that I highly recommend is there's a tour of the Whitsunday Islands.
The what?
They're called Whitsunday Islands.
Okay.
And these islands are just these beautiful little islands off the coast of Australia. It's somewhere, that coastline that I was traveling up. I forget, there's a city that you go into, and from there's boats that will take you out there. And it's like a day trip. Gorgeous white sand beaches. In fact, the sand, it's like the silicone. And some of the people that were on the boat, and it was a little boat, maybe holds like maybe 15, 20 people, but they brought their jewelry with them because you can use the sand to clean your jewelry.
What?
Yeah.
There's some people doing their research out there.
Oh, yeah.
What?
It's like this special kind of sand that's on these islands. And there's like huge iguanas on them, and it's just really cool. Water out there is beautiful.
That's why you should be educated whenever you travel.
Yeah, no,
about where you travel. There's no telling what you can do while you're there.
No, definitely it's worth doing your research.
Wow,
and I definitely did some research going into it. And so that was worth it. And then the end of the trip was doing, I've been certified to scuba dive since I was 18. Right. And I'm like, that was kind of the genesis of the trip, was like, I want to go dive the Great Barrier Reef. And so I got up into Cairns, Port Douglas, and these scuba diving outfits are amazing.
World class, I would imagine.
Yeah, I guess you can do liveaboards, which a lot of people do, because what you don't realize is it's a little ways out there to get to the best parts of the reef. But what they have is they have these speedboats that are like catamaran speedboats that literally kind of lift out of the water. And so they'll load them up with scuba divers and people who are just going snorkeling. And man, you are flying. So, you get all your outfit, rent your scuba gear, do all that. I even rented a little underwater camera and then got on this thing and just flew like 2 hours But
I would go just for the boat ride.
oh, it's crazy. I mean, it's just, yeah. You know, it's fun at first, but then it's just a boat ride. We're on a boat.
I won't say the bad word right now.
And so then we get out there, and the thing I will say, compared to other places I've dove, like, you know, I've dove Cozumel, and I've dove the Cayman Islands is pretty awesome.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah,
Diving.
Caymans,
Mm-hmm.
great diving. I've dove even off the Texas coast. There's a great little area called the Flower Gardens.
What?
Yeah, you got to go way out. It's way out, but it's actually a really beautiful reef
Wow, we have
out
to
there.
talk about that.
Yeah, but it takes. We have to stay overnight. We used to go out on my dad's boat and stay overnight because it's about 5-6 hours out. But it's this little bump out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, and it's got coral and stuff. It's kind of cool.
Ooh, I want to talk about that.
Yeah. So the thing that really impressed me with Australia, it's a Great Barrier Reef. The amount of ocean life was crazy.
It was good.
Oh my God,
You
it
saw
was
the
just
good?
so vibrant.
Oh,
Like as
makes me
soon as
so
you get
glad you
in
saw
there, there's
that.
so many fish and so much going on. And like there was sea worms and stuff that the dive master pointed out to us. And like everywhere you turned, you saw cool stuff. And at one point we got to a reef and there's sharks everywhere, reef sharks. You know, they're just like whatever.
You saw sharks when you were diving?
Oh,
I
they
have
were
not ever seen sharks when I've been diving
They were
yet.
swimming around us. I had them swim right under me. And these
there was
are-
a time when I would have been scared, but I think now I
Reef
would
sharks.
not be.
These
at
were,
all.
I think, these were white tip reef sharks. They eat little fish. They're not aggressive towards
Right.
humans. You know what I mean? The only time you're ever going to get into a dangerous situation is hammerheads have a tendency to be
Yeah,
a little
I've
bit
heard
more
that.
aggressive, and then of course great whites.
Yeah,
Just
tiger
so
sharks.
rare. Tiger sharks aren't even that aggressive. You know?
Okay.
And at least I haven't come across a tiger shark, but I've
I haven't come across any sharks except
understood.
well in
that
Key
they're
West,
not.
and I lived in Key West.
Yeah.
I did, but
So yeah, it was amazing to get to see the Great Barrier Reef and see it still very vibrant and lots of sea life and having sharks swim around you and just.
did you go on several dives?
I ended up going on 2 dives. So it was, were they both the same day? I think I ended up doing, no, I did 2 different days of diving. Went because it takes a few hours to get out there. So I ended up doing 2 different areas that were pretty similar. You know, I think one had a little bit more like depth and a little cliff or, you know, a wall, but in general, both of them. Yeah, it was the second dive that was the second day that I saw more of the sharks. So, you know, and it's a little more pricey there to dive, but in general,
Well worth it.
was well worth it. Yeah, that was really cool. And then, you know, from there, I ended up just kind of ending the trip, and it was kind of cool because the rental car company had a deal where I could drop the rental car off up there, you know, so kind of after more than 2 weeks of driving, I left the car there, took a short flight back to Sydney, and then took my flight home back out of Sydney.
Sounds amazing. I would love to do something like that.
It was a cool trip. Yeah. And along with this podcast, I will post my Australia photos
Do
up
it.
there.
I want to look
Yeah.
at all of them. I'm going to look at the ones you don't post. Ladies and gentlemen, I get to look at the ones that aren't posted.
Well, that is my Australia trip. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did.
And I guess next time we'll see what other stories I come up with for the next episode of Chucky Radio.
Sayonara.
Thanks, Jahna.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Chucky Radio. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're listening to this podcast on any of the major podcast services like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, please hit that subscribe button so you're notified of future podcasts. Also, would love to get your feedback, so rate the podcast, make a comment. I'd really appreciate that. Until next time, peace out.